Today we have as a guest Bob Mankoff, who is the cartoon editor of The New Yorker, has been the cartoon editor of The New Yorker for over 20 years now. And
1997, he can't even do the math. This is the guy who used to head search.
Okay, on that, I think I better let him do the talking.
All right, I'm ready. Thank you, Rudy. Thank you. Hey, great to be here. I have a question. Is this noticeable? Actually, the reason I've been wearing this, and I've been wearing it around the New Yorker, is that when I actually wear glass, it won't be as obnoxious. Anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about my book, because I'm here to sell my book. I'm running around California doing that. How About Never is Never Good for You, my life in cartoons. But I'm also going to talk about computers and humor, and the title of the talk, well, no, I got to remember what you guys are going to get if you buy the book. Hey, GoPro, watch this. Oh, is that exciting? Forget that wing gliding stuff. This is dangerous. I got a paper cut doing this. Okay, that's what you're going to get. You know, you buy the book, whatever. You get that. And what I think I want to say is if that little drawing I did makes the book more valuable, I'd like it back. Okay. Oh, come on. Go. Oh, yeah, this book, my cartoon is, the thing I want to say about this is there's going to be jokes and information in this lecture. The jokes will be the information, and the information will be the joke. Think about it. So that's my cartoon. You see, that's how old I am. I'm my birthday today, I'm 70. That's great, just getting a hand for being 70, that's wonderful. They say 70 is the new 50, and that's good, except dead isn't the new alive. That's sort of the bad part of that. But anyway, I got in the Yale Book of Quotation, Businessman, Thursday's Out, How About Never is Never Good for You. Next to that, other well-known humorist, Mao Zedong. Okay, so this is the title. There is no algorithm for humor. You need a brain. Now, the brain doesn't have to be that big. It never ceases to amaze me what little brains people have. But you need some sort of brain, I'm going to contend, to actually do real human humor. Now, I was up online, and I watched Watson, beat Ken Jennings, and so I have this little clip. Let me see, make sure.
William Wilkinson's An Account of the Principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia inspired this author's most famous novel. 30 seconds, players. Good luck. Over to Ken Jennings now. 18,200 going in. Bram Stoker is what we're looking for, and we find. Who is Stoker? I, for one, welcome our new computer overlord.
Well, there, he did something Watson couldn't do. He made a joke. He was funny, right, in that situation. Now, there are computer programs that do create humor. This comes stand-up, and that looks pretty impressive. Wow, a lot of stuff going on there, a lot of processing stuff, really good. But the jokes aren't that good. Why is an alone region different from a sole habitation? One is a lonely air, the other is an only lair. Thank you. For real humor, you need more than a brain. You need a body. Actually, I got this mixed up. But you need a body like that, not like that. Because, see, that's a funny body. Humor must always deflate. And when I say you need a body because you need to be a human being, because humor is more than just cognition. Even if you had robots, this is a great cartoon. Even if I can't feel love, if I can't feel love, what was the point of making me so damn good looking? Well, of course, the robots and the computers can't feel anything. Now, humor is an emotion. It's a very, very strong emotion. It's an ecstatic emotion. We don't know what she's laughing at, but it wasn't a computer joke. That's my first wife, incidentally. You know, it's funny, though, because this thing that we think is a good thing, this little parenthetical point I want to make, was not always thought that way at all. This is Lord Chesterfield in a letter to his son, How to Conduct Himself. Frequent and loud laughter is the characteristic of folly and ill manners. How low and becoming a thing laughter is, not to mention the disagreeable noise that it makes and the shocking distortion of the face that it occasions. I have never laughed in my life. You know, it's interesting. Our view of laughter and the importance of it has changed. And I can show you that by, well, this is Plato and Aristotle and Hobbes' views of it. Mixture of pleasure and pain that lies in the malice of amusement. Aristotle, comedy is an imitation of people worse than themselves. Hobbes is all about superiority theory. You'll be happy to see this. This is a Google Ngram. Nobody even had a sense of humor until about 1870. Isn't that amazing? It's actually quite a new thing. It actually is a new thing. Before that, based on what I showed you about Aristotle and Plato, views of humor were very, very negative. Why? Because the thing that we call the sense of humor, this other thing was called either a sense of the ridiculous or a sense of ridicule. Because that's one of the primary functions of humor. There's wonderful functions of humor, but when you think, well, why is it in every culture, everywhere, and all the time? What does it do? What is its function? Why is it everywhere? And you ask, what is it that keeps everybody conforming, basically? Not at Google, but everywhere else. Okay, what is it? You don't want to be embarrassed, right? You don't want to have that toilet paper on your shoe. You don't want to have your fly open, right? You know what it's like to be in elementary school and high school. Well, what's the policeman of embarrassment? Laughter. So one of the functions of laughter, a harsh function, a conforming function, is ridicule. People say laughter is contagious. Well, that laughter was contagious, but it's not contagious when it's behind your back. So that's one of the reasons it wasn't looked on favorably. Now it's very different, because the sense of humor came to mean something else. What a sense of humor came to mean, it's easy to see by what you say if someone doesn't have it. What do you say someone doesn't have a sense of humor? It's more than they're not funny, right? They have rigid thinking. They have no perspective on themselves. The transformation, why it became important, and why it's very difficult for computers to have it, because a sense of humor, which originally was something that was directed out to something deformed, something ugly that you didn't have empathy for, got directed back towards ourselves as something to be respected. That's why it's valued, and that's part of its function now also. What does evolution tell us about humor? That's a little cartoon of mine.
As we have listened to animals
it's a type of play.
We have heard what appeared to be the sounds of laughter. And we studied these for a couple of years without quite understanding that this might be laughter. And then one day we decided to tickle some animals. And we realized that we had to look at the sounds at a very different register than we can hear. So we obtained these transducers that are called bat detectors that can bring very high frequencies down to our auditory range. And when we did this and we listened in, we could tickle animals and generate a lot of vocal activity that appeared to be laughter. These animals would begin to enjoy our company, and they would start to play with our hands, and wherever we would put our hands, they would follow it. And when we tested these animals to ask whether they were enjoying this kind of activity, the unambiguous answer was yes.
An interesting result of that study is that he has talking rats. I tried that in the subway and it bit me, so not always the case. But one of the things it shows how deep humor is an emotion. When you look at humor overall, you'll see, first of all, it's a social phenomenon. Whatever that woman was doing, wherever she was not alone. It's a social phenomenon. There's something cognitive that stimulates it. There's this emotion. There's a feeling that happens before you laugh. So you can have people judge comedy films and instruct them not to laugh, and they still will be able to know that it's funny and feel funny. And then there's this expression in laughter, which is a type of communication. Okay. So the same thing happens with chimps, okay, as we go further up.
It's coming. It's coming to get you. Here it comes, Alfie. Here it comes, Alfie. It's coming!
Okay, and this is a little bit higher up yet, because this shows you a lot about humor. This is a little game of peekaboo. It's not just tickling. It's not tickling, and this is the play face that's happening. This is the play face that's happening. So we see, when looking at this, you see that humor is very, very deep, very, very, very deep in us, very deep as a feeling and very deep as a function. So it's a form of communication. What it communicates is that we're playing. Humor is a form of play. We're always we go between two modes. One is sort of the serious, what's called the telic mode, purposeful. Okay, we want things to be done. And the other is the play mode. When we're in a purposeful mode, we actually like to be relaxed. We don't like to be anxious. We don't like to be overstimulated. When we're in a play mode, exactly the opposite exists. We want to be excited. Look at this video.
Here we go.
Well, that's interesting. He laughs, doesn't it? So the other thing that shows you is that humor is an emotional regulation mechanism. Partly it's based on surprise, but it's the surprise we expect. That's what happened, the surprise we expect. Now, surprise is always bad for an organism. You should never be surprised from an evolutionary point of view. See Udi's brow looks furrowed because he said he's going to be funny. Don't worry about that. Just give me time. So surprise is always bad because you should predict. So originally, when you're surprised, whether it's by a joke or whatever, there's a slight negative valence. You should know what's happening. Surprise can be met by three different things. Fear, obviously. Awe, or laughter. All of them are respiratory responses, preparing the organism for something. In the simplest cases of laughter, you have surprise, which is always bad, followed by something trivial. That's just relief laughter. You thought something bad. Jokes and everything build on this. Here's interesting. This is my contract, because now I want to get a little to the cognitive part. Here's my contract. I have this in the book from the New Yorker when they gave me a contract to be a cartoonist. I blurred out all the part about the liquor and the women and the money because I didn't think that was your business. But look at the contract. This is a contract for me as a cartoonist. It doesn't have the word cartoon anywhere. It says idea drawing. For any idea drawing we accept from you during this period with respect to idea drawings. So that's the other part of humor, especially for the New Yorker, that there is an idea. People ask me how I get my ideas. And I glibly say, I think of them. Here's some ideas I've thought of. There is no justice in the world. There is some justice in the world is just. It's called What Lemmings Believe. Now, so there are just straight gags, and then there are gags, and this is part of what I write about in the book, that have some other value because there's some other idea. There's an idea over and above the idea that is happening in the joke. So the joke works just on the levels of lemmings, but for me, this is a broader joke. There's another meaning to it, which is about belief in general. For me, it's a belief about a religion, and it's my expression of the idea that all the arguments, the horrible arguments between religions, are about who has the most imaginary friend. Okay, this is actually a little diagram. I mean, best imaginary friend. Here's a diagram I make of how you actually get ideas, and which is a mashup of different concepts. I was asked by Psychology Today to show how you get an idea. So I said, okay, I'm going to do an idea about the wheel. Okay. So originally, what I did was I drew a wheel. I drew a square wheel. And wheel is invention, fire is invention. When I saw a square wheel, I said, oh, that's like a bad thing. That could be a clunker or a car. Trade in for a new model, I wrote. Wheel, transportation, car, bicycle, what? Then I came up with a cartoon in which I said, the back part I call the wheel, the front part the brake. Then I didn't know what I would do, wheel on fire, invention. I didn't know. That's just a mashup. That's going to be an idea. That's an incongruity. There'll be an idea. Then if it was a real, wheel, it could be a car. Dad, can I borrow the wheel tonight? The interesting things about these ideas is that they don't use it up. They create other ideas. There are actually an infinite number of ideas like this. Here's one that we had in the New Yorker. Yeah, and I invented the ticket. And now we've taken it completely out that. So one of the things that's happening here is that you do have the basic mechanism of surprise working. It works very, very fast. It works very fast because you see the image, which is incongruous, and then you put this thing together. Built on the tiny little surprise is cognitive thrill or pleasure. One of the things is when many things happen at the same time, my belief anyway, what's happening in humor is you can't parse them out. So if at the same moment that the surprise, if I tell a joke, and okay, so I'll tell a joke. Here's a joke. So a guy is walking in a field and he sees a farmer walking a pig, and the pig has an artificial leg. Now, in your minds, you're already a little worried, so this is good. I'm deconstructing the joke a little bit for you. E.B. White said, analyzing humor is like dissecting a frog. Nobody's much interested in the frog dies. Well, I'll kill a frog. Okay, so now the guy's walking a pig, and the pig's got an artificial leg. Now you're a little worried. Not really, because you're smart. You're from Google. Like, what's going on here? I sure hope I get this. Because really, come on. Okay, so he asked the farmer, he says, what's with, I've never seen a pig with an artificial leg. He said, you see that house up there, way up there? There was a fire in that house. And this pig came up. He saved me. Then he went up, and he saved my wife and my 2 children. He said, so he burned his leg in the fire, right? He said, no, you don't eat a pig like that all at once. Oh, that's horrible. Okay, so all of a sudden the narrative completely changed, and then you put the things together. Whether or not you like that or don't like that will depend about many things, your disposition, your feeling about animal rights, a million other things. These are all enhancers or inhibitors that don't really have anything to do with the joke. If they get enhanced or inhibited enough, they can inhibit it. If you have enough enhancers, you can make anyone really laugh at anything. But the point is there's a narrative switch, which is the surprise and then the pleasure. And the pleasure then could also be the pleasure in your own sadistic and cruel impulses towards that pig. George Orwell said, jokes don't degrade us. They just tell us we are degraders. Okay, no Thursdays out, how about never is never good for you. So that's the cartoon. That's the cartoon that put my daughter through college and everything. It's great. Actually, it's okay. One of the things to ask about it is, why is that part? Why can't I just end it? Why can't I just end it with, no Thursdays out, how about never? Hands. What's that? It just sounds mean. Well, what do you mean? Why is it not mean? Because it's never good for you makes it... I mean, it's never good for you rubs it in, doesn't it?
How about 5? Is 5 good for you?
Exactly. Well, you're on to something. You did more than just eat that salad. What it is this. It also is Arthur Koestler, in a book, The Act of Creation, talked about the similarity between science, humor, and art, in that they involve creating things from different matrices, different associations. And humor certainly does that. What this is doing in mashing up, what the mash-up here is between a message that is absolutely rude with the syntax continuing to be polite. So that's what you were on to, really. That's why is never good for you, continues the politeness. So what happens is a cognitive synergy. At the both time, we're experiencing rudeness and politeness. And I think that's what gives it its little frisson. Humor needs a target. How's my GoPro? All right. Yeah. Well, so like you said, it can be a little cruel. We've all felt like that. Now look at this cartoon. So that's fairly benign, you would think, right? But is it benign? Once again, I want to point out the dispositional nature of humor, which means your attitudes and your opinions will determine the context of humor and how you react to it. So that seems fairly benign, but let's look at the response. Email comment on this cartoon. Another joke on white males. Ha ha, the wit. It's nice, I'm sure, to be young and rude, but someday you'll be old unless you drop dead as I wish. So, a little cordially, Robert Byron. Actually, he's making a joke. See, he's mashing up, right? He himself is mashing up. He actually is being funny as well because he's saying cordially, Robert Byron, after something is completely non-cordial. Okay, discouraging data on the antidepressant. Oh, I like that little part. That was a good laugh. I want that on record because we had the regular laugh, the real laugh, the emotional laugh, ha ha ha, and then we had the ooh, which says, I drive a Prius, I'm good, I believe in global warming. You wouldn't believe the organic foods, everything. Honestly, that first part was a mistake, something I regret. This is a survey I did online to see. This shows you actually the real diversity of opinion. So people could rate it a 10, and 109 people liked it. So really, the majority of people liked it, just about, or a lot anyway. But look at this person did not like it. They voted only 3. They said, I like animals. Look how much they like them. 1, 2. You can't like animals more than 5 exclamation points. If you do, it's unhealthy. Okay, look at this person. I don't like to see animals suffer, even in cartoons. So I am solicitous of these people. I wrote back and I said, they don't suffer. We use anesthetic ink. Seems just like the results of my. So this is actually when humor is not affected by contagion and the contagion of laughter, the diversity of opinion is very great. But it depends on what actually things that you feel really strongly about, you usually will not think is funny. When you have really, really strong beliefs, then humor to you seems like some sort of blasphemy. Okay, humor is a type of entertainment. This is a type of entertainment too, right? It's a tiger in a cage. What's exciting about it is, ew, he could kill us. What's good about it is, no, he can't. It's just like the guy in the roller coaster. You're safe but in danger, safe but in danger, safe but in danger. Wow, that's fun. So that's sort of fun, I guess. That's not that much fun. That's sort of a bad zoo, right? But there are worse zoos. So that's the line when you look at humor within context. And this would be the difficulty for computers because not just in the creation of it, but in the evaluation of it, to know what's, from my job, what's right and wrong for the New Yorker. Look at this cartoon. Well, I like that. We got the O before. That's a definitely. If you got the O before for that one, how about this? Oh, that is sad. Who did you think was going up the ramp? But this is the point of how of the titration of humor, how you move it around. One of the ways to look at humor, or a lot of humor, as the enhancer, not the essential part of it, is the right amount of wrong. What's the right? It's like the Las Vegas ad, the right amount of wrong. So just enough where you like the wrongness of it, because actually we want freedom from the rightness of our lives. But with this thing, by putting the guy up there, or if I had him hanging, it's all terrible. Okay, one of the things, of course, we have is our caption contest. And one of the reasons I'm here, besides I'm a good friend of Udi, and he's a great guy, big fan of cartoons, is that I have data on the caption contest. I have millions of entries. You are data people. Help me out. So on the caption contest, every week there's a winner, 3 finalists. I won't go through it, and 1 that you can enter. So here is aliens are coming right behind the car, right? Okay. Now, I gave this data to computer linguists at the University of Michigan. I really hope you guys can do better than this. Actually, very nice guy. Dragomir Radovich and Ben King. And what they did was, I get about 5,000 to 10,000 captions. They took all the words that came in, compared them to basically all the words on the internet, standard words, and picked out the words that were unusual, were not common. And from that, I changed the formula to what the fuck, because I didn't understand the first formula. Well, they come up with this mapping which showed the clusters of words, and really the clusters of captions. And from that, and this is like a blow-up of it, and from that, you got basically although 5,000 or 10,000 comes in, not 5,000 or 10,000 different captions. It's called collective discourse, so it's very interesting that no one knows what the other people are doing, but they're doing this. But the truth is, the computer did not create headlight beam, alien, UFO tailgate. Someone had to look at these clusters to do that, so it actually was not tremendously useful to me, because truthfully, as it comes in, I can see these clusters very, very fast. Okay, so I don't care what planet they're from. They can pass on left like everyone else. So these were sort of the 3 finalists. Rather ordinary. One of the things about humor is it can be meta humor. This is a site called What a Misunderstanding, and for every single contest, it has the same caption. What a misunderstanding. Then I'm just showing how complicated humor is. Then there's the monkeys you ordered, which just simply says what's in the caption. There's a UFO right behind us. Then there's the anti-caption contest, which I'll read. Back off, you motherfucking alien piece of shit, and go back to your own planet, you uninsured little green cocksucker. Which, of course, is much funnier because of the transcript. That is a complete enhancer joke. Okay, now look at this. This is one of them. And one of the things you see in the generation of humor in crowdsourcing, okay, this was the winning caption, objection, Your Honor, alleged killer whale. And in the caption contest, I get people complaining. I said, I can't believe it. Someone stole my caption. I can't believe it. I was on a plane. I wrote it on the back of the New Yorker. I left it in the thing, and then someone clearly stole it. Okay, no, they didn't. Hundreds of the basically same caption come in for every single contest. Okay, sometimes the best caption is the very simplest. Sort of makes you stop and think, doesn't it? And that's what I hope I've done today, and now we can talk about humor. Thank you. Man, this hurts. We'll sit and talk. I'll answer questions, and Udi will moderate.
Okay. Let me ask the first question, and we'll go from there. So you mentioned that surprises is something against our nature. Are you still surprised by seeing cartoons? Can they surprise you?
I am surprised. In other words, I am I'm in the position of not enjoying humor, but evaluating it. So whenever you mediate a response, in other words, so I'm not, one of the things, I'll never be as surprised as you are by the joke. I'll always sort of be ahead of it. So I am usually not surprised, but yet I can evaluate the humor, so I know what's going to surprise you. That's really what a professional does in any art, that I'm aware of the audience. So when I constructed, right now, this thing here that I did for you guys, when I constructed it, some jokes were new, some old, and I had to be able to sort of predict. And in that case, I'm not surprised at all, because I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know I'm going to put this on. I know it's going to create tension, because it's weird looking at me. I know that actually is the fuel which humor can work with. But I'm not going to be surprised by it, so I'm not really, or the things I'm surprised at are the things that you're not going to find funny.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the cartoons that make you funny, nobody here will laugh at.
What's that? Well, for the most part, because you tend to laugh at just weird things or a type of absurdity. So I made myself laugh for no reason at all in the airport. Crazy. I don't know what the guy was saying. He said, please watch your, your unintended luggage. It may be confiscated, damaged, destroyed, and then I just said, or eaten. And I don't know, it just made me laugh. It just said, or eaten. It just seems so, and I would just die to have him say that over that. But it's interesting. So when we talk about, one of the things we talk about is the play frame. So we're in the play frame, and you heard that. If you had heard that at the airport, imagine, you wouldn't laugh. You'd be frightened. What is loose in the airport that is eating luggage?
So you do laugh. That's good.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Get the mic in the back.
Do you often come across a cartoon you don't get at all?
Well, there are different varieties of don't get. There's the don't get in which you're not intended to get. In some way, you're not intended to get eaten. In other words, it doesn't have closure in the same way. You know what I mean? It doesn't like, oh, now I understand it. If I tell you about a cartoon and the title is French Army Knife, and it has all corkscrews, you understand it. You have put together, and there's complete closure. I understand the joke. The other thing, all of a sudden you've been surprised, and it's your enjoyment of the absurd. And so a lot of that happens because we definitely have cartoons like that in New Yorker. It might have a title, Paninis of the Old West. Now, in and of itself, the phrase Paninis of the Old West is funny. It's just, if you were to evaluate funny phrases from one phrase, you say that's funny. Do you say, what does it mean? Now, I can make it mean something because I can have a villain on the tracks with the panini. You know what I mean? So now it's going to be smushed. So this is going back to the computer thing. This is what makes humor such the difficult problem. So many different ways that it can interact, so many ways that it interacts because we're human beings, because of how surprise, how emotion, all of these, come together. So I definitely, sometimes I do have a cartoon I don't get because I'm not seeing the association. It's some reference I don't get, so that happens. But most of the cartoons that people complain about not getting are because they have this very, very loose structure.
Yeah. Let me ask you another,
Yeah.
actually an advice. So when Dave Barry was here, he gave Serge a very good advice. He said, what you need to do is every few minutes, send up a message saying, now get back to work.
I think whenever they click search, it should just say search your conscience.
Search your conscience.
First. You know what I mean? Look at all the wrong things you did today.
Okay. But what would I click on?
What? I'm no interface designer.
Okay, good point.
All of a sudden, I'm
Okay. Next question.
Oh, so do cartoonists actually do any research on what lemmings actually look like, or do they?
Excuse me?
The lemmings in your cartoon, Do you actually know?
Those are completely anatomically accurate. Not only is the outside accurate, the inside of the lemon. I just don't draw the outside of the lemon. First, I construct the complete skeleton of the lemon. Then I clothe it. So actually, sometimes there is fact-checking at the New Yorker, and so here's a funny story about that. Now, I did a cartoon when Prozac first came out, maybe in the early 90s, so it's based on the bluebird cliche, bluebird of happiness. So there's a bluebird, and he's got a vial, the pills in his mouth, and he's saying, hiya, guy, I'm the bluebird of Prozac. So this is when it first came out. So the fact checkers came to me and said, the bird's too big. I said, well, it's hard because you got to see the pills and stuff, back and forth. So they fact check everything. So I called her over. Her name was Dusty. I said, Dusty, I don't want anyone else to hear this. They can't talk. The birds can't talk. So some of the things, for instance, if you draw the Supreme Court, you're going to have to get the number of pillars right, columns. If it's an American flag, it's, so there is checking like that.
So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the cartoons that David Remnick did not let you publish. So you said its humor is, safe but in danger and getting the right amount of wrong. So I'm wondering if you could square that with that.
Okay, so here once again, the New Yorker, like Google, is a commercial institution that is supported by advertising. So, the only, I forget the guy's name, great comedian, Stanhope, his last name, said, the only real freedom is stand up in a club, where you can say just what you want, anything you want. I can't say that here because why? Because there are real punishments for it. And you have to decide, do you want those commercial punishments, on you. But here are cartoons that the New Yorker did not publish. One of them, which is funny, I did this when The Sopranos was a hot show. It has like a Tony Soprano guy. And he's in a room, with his guys, a closed room, and he's saying, if these walls could talk, and they knew what was good for them, they'd shut the fuck up. Okay, so then we're not going to use fuck, okay, because we don't do it. Because a child might see the word fuck, and you know what would happen then. They would die. We know all the children who die every day because they see the word fuck, and, that happens. We can't have that on our head. Another cartoon, a great cartoon actually, was done by Sam Gross, and it was right after the Danish cartoon controversy. And everybody was running scared. Everybody was scared, physically scared. I gave talks on stage, with imams and stuff like that, and I was worried, physically worried, because of what I was going to say. I was worried, because, so I told, during that period, I said, I remember what I did. I knew I had to avoid Muhammad. I couldn't say anything about Muhammad because I was afraid they were going to kill me, honestly. So I said, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going right to the top. So you can make fun of God, you can't make fun of Muhammad. But anyway, when Sam, so after Sam Gross, the great cartoonist, submitted this cartoon. It's in heaven, and there's a suicide bomber, and he's all blown to pieces. Different parts. He's got his head and stuff like that. And there's, let's say, an imam there. And the imam is saying to him, you'll get the virgins when we find your penis. So we didn't print that. So there are lots of cartoons that we don't print. And that's partly because the New Yorker, basically, its avenue is benign humor. And I think there's definitely a place for these cartoons. I think, I don't run the New Yorker, and David Remnick doesn't even run the New Yorker. And part of what the New Yorker is taste. But in terms of cartoons and this question I always get asked is, where do you draw the line between doing this and offending? And my real answer to that, my real feeling about that is, offending is an overrated offense. It's just, okay, someone was offended. What happened? Did anybody die? They'll get it. Okay, a person was offended. Then what happened right after that? Did they have lunch? Did they go about the rest of their day? Could they go to sleep at night? In other words, everything about the only thing that happened is they were offended. So I don't think it's a big deal. But in a perfect world, we could offend more people. You have a question?
I was going to ask in general terms of how much the cartoons have changed since 1925, but I think I'll be more specific. Do you think that one would have worked in 1925?
That's actually sort of a more meta. First of all, in 1925, the cartoons in the New Yorker were terrible. They were just like the cartoons everywhere. They were these long, drawn-out pieces. They didn't have the American vernacular. I could give you a whole history of cartooning going back to Punch in 1843. So they were very tedious. Even the cartoons in the New Yorker in 28 and 29 are sort of groundbreaking cartoons would seem very mild today. In I think it's 28, by Carl Rose, captioned by E.B. White, it's a mother at a dinner table, and she's saying to like a little Lord Fauntleroy son, eat your broccoli, and he says, I say it's spinach and the hell with it. That was actually very sort of a breakthrough, just because of the vulgarity of the language for that time. It's basically, it would be like he was saying, well, fuck it. But it still has sort of a he said, she said thing. The way cartoons actually changed over time is, by the 30s or 40s, I could show that, you basically have this incongruity thing, the strange picture and the punchline. In the 40s and 50s, most of the humor is within the cartoon frame when it's observational humor. In other words, the person within the cartoon is not making a joke. So you might have a woman looking at, in 1947 at a watch saying, at a baseball game saying, annoyed, why didn't they tell us there was going to be an extra inning? Okay, she's not making the joke. An Alex Gregory joke from the 90s in which one woman is saying to another, I started my vegetarianism for health concerns, then moral reasons, and now just to annoy people. That's a modern cartoon, and the reason is that the people who came of age, their comedy background is sitcom, where people make their own jokes. So it keeps changing, it keeps evolving over time. One of the things that I've written about in this book is how a whole new generation of people are doing it, and they're sort of bringing their own take to it.
So let me ask you another, actually give you an opportunity. So you don't think the computers can generate jokes? And people have tried to do it for a while?
It can generate good jokes. It can generate very bad jokes. It's like a lot of people who look at a cartoon in the New Yorker and it's a bad cartoon. Maybe it is bad. It's a lousy cartoon, terrible cartoon. And I'm admitting that. World's horrible. I can't believe we published that cartoon. It's like someone who goes to a baseball game in Yankee Stadium and watches the players strike out and says, I can do that. Let me play. So here you have the very worst types of jokes. Yeah, I know, computers can't do it.
So let me give you the premise. So that the reason I'm saying that, actually I found out there's a field in computer science called computational humor.
I showed you it.
Right, and it's not very funny name. If they want to succeed, they have to find a better name. But the point is, it reminded me of chess at the beginning, and somebody was very famous, David Levy was his name, and he bet that no computer will beat him in 10 years. And he actually got the 10 years exactly right, because the computer beat him in 10 and a half years. But in 10 years did not, so he won the bet. He did it in 1968.
Because there were rules, now, there are algorithms. You can play chess.
The question is, are you willing to make this bet?
Oh, of course.
Well,
of course. Even all these programs that are generating those bad jokes, they don't even know they're bad. The people actually, those are the best that people have to pick out. So there's no way for it to evaluate. You know, it's actually this, what I'm trying to say, I talked with Louis about before, is that it really comes back to the hard problem, and the problem is consciousness and feeling itself, which is the hard problem. That's the hard problem. That's how we react to humor. That's how we generate humor. We generate humor because we have bodies. And so there's a small element of it, which is this cognitive element, which is very, very difficult in and of itself. So all the rules I gave you, they're just sort of narrative rules. When I say benign violation, the right amount of wrong, well, the right amount. Now, there's no question that you could pair computers with crowdsourcing of people to say, is this the right amount of wrong, and things like that. Just computers in and of themselves, because all they have by themselves is syntax. There's no grounding in reality. I don't think. The point is, we can set up a contest, and we can make it real, for example. We can have
pick up a topic, and you have half an hour, and you generate 5 jokes, and the computer will generate 5 jokes, and you give it to random people and see which one they think is funnier. So the point is, if you put a name to this bet, he got very famous because he made this bet. You should make your own bet.
I'll make the bet. Well, the question is, I don't think the computer can generate. It can't simply draw on jokes. You know what I mean? It can't simply take the huge database of jokes. You actually have to have a program that has no, in other words, has no humor knowledge, no pointers to say this is funny, this is funny, this is funny. I pointed out that they have as much chance of generating jokes as they do of having sex. Okay, computers have sex. Can they enjoy it? Why would they do it? Why not? Why can't? Because there's nothing there. There's no experience. The idea that experience itself, the actual core of our lives, is somehow irrelevant to one of the most important things in our lives, which is humor, to me is, anyway, I'm willing to be proven wrong, but, and it would be interesting too, but you have to look at those things that are computational, driving or algorithmic things, or certainly chess, and those things that are actually not computational. I don't think what I'm doing now is computational. I don't think I'm computing anything. I don't think I'm drawing from a vast database of sentences that I'm stringing together accidentally. I think most of the things I'm saying right now I have never said before in this way. And it's not because there's a random generator generating sentences. I'm actually making sense to you. Although, as I pointed out to Udi, one of the great advantages of being funny is that I'm reasonably intelligent. You see, I'm reasonably intelligent, but I'm really not that smart. But I'm very funny, so it seems that I'm more intelligent than I am. And because I'm pretty intelligent, it also seems that I'm funnier than I am. That's a joke.
Okay, next question.
Sure, yeah. So at Google, it's become pretty popular to share information and humor using memes.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you enjoy writing memes, or if there's any memes you've written that you think are funny.
What I do pretty much is, I do stuff on Twitter, which I like Twitter for the one-liners. So I think, I'll put up maybe today, because I'm 70, I'll say, as I was saying to Udi, I like sort of aphorisms. I said about being 70, the good news is it could be worse. The bad news is it will be. So when you just think about that, I don't want to tout that as the world's greatest aphorism or anything, it demands a very deep type of understanding of existence that is very elliptical. You know what I mean? So much is left out that you then put in there to understand as a human being what it means. Basically, you have to understand, he looks like he's in pretty good shape. He's 70. You say, hey, 70, okay. 20 years, you're not going to stay in good shape. The train's only going in one direction. So it could be, and it will be. So all of that, and the thing is, you immediately process that. In fact, to the degree, the people who laughed processed it probably a little faster in less than a half a second, and the other people maybe didn't, or whatever. So the fact is, for it to work as a joke, some experiments show that, it's got to take about less than half a second to put together all the things. And you're putting together a huge amount in that time. How are you doing it? I don't think it's by searching very quickly, Google-like, parallel processing through vast things. I think the fact that we just exist, feel, have qualia, have sensation, that immediately, that it's immediately happening. It's like if I had a stick that was 186,000, how fast is the speed of light? It's 186,286 miles long, okay? Okay, and you can't go faster than the speed of light, right? But my stick is 186,286 miles, and you're on the end of it. That's it. It went faster than light. I pushed the stick, right? I transmitted the information. I know there's a flaw in it, but I don't care. See, one of the great things about funny is that when you're funny, you distract people from the actual logic of thinking about it. So people say, maybe he's right. Maybe Google should invent this long stick. Maybe this is a whole huge, let's give up that whole, self-driving car, the stick, the big stick. That's going to be the thing. So I think something like that happens, and of course I don't know what happens, and something like that happens in the mind where somehow the physical essences and substances are being transmitted almost immediately for you to do that. The idea that billions of computations are happening through huge databases and things just doesn't make sense to me. I think it's a limitation of our minds that almost the only way we can think about it is through computation. That's the only way we can think it could possibly be done, because that's what you do.
Well, since you mentioned your age.
So the bet is on.
The bet is on. Well, you have to give a name, and you have to put
computer
rules,
overlords.
and you have to promise some money to whoever. Okay. People have looked at humor in medicine and showed that, in fact, you can get better if you laugh and if you're involved in humor. And yet, when you go to the doctor's office, you see news magazines, which are depressing, rather than cartoon books. Why don't you guys go and try to put cartoon books all over?
Well, first of all, let me say about humor and health. Don't give up on the chemo. Humor is great as long as you don't really have something wrong with you. For all aches and pains and other things, if you really have something bad wrong with you. So that's, I am not a humor evangelist. I am fascinating with the cognitive, emotional, the functional sides of humor. But I don't think humor is like this great health cure. It's okay. It can act as a mild analgesic. You do these things, you stick the person's hand in cold water, and then you show them comedy, and it lasts a little longer than if they're watching something depressing. All of that. I think in terms of medicine, though, I do think it is an emotional regulation mechanism. So there are a number of different ways it can be used. There are different types of humor. There's affiliative humor, which is basically the humor that in difficult situations we use to cope. We just kid around and do things. I try to use that, sort of a lot in my, when as you get older, you get things wrong with you. And then I'll say to them, I'm be at the doctor, and I'll just say to myself, hey, why not be happy for all the diseases you don't have? So, you make a little joke for yourself. Then there's self-deprecating humor. And then there's humor that works in a social way that just bonds it, that you don't feel the doctor is this impersonal automata. But the problem is humor is a skill. And if you're very unskilled at it, it's not a good thing to use. And most doctors are.
Okay.
Why don't we sign some books, of course, right? Then these people can buy the book. Oh, no. Okay, go ahead. Some more questions.
Why don't we have last question?
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you do your question?
Okay. This is the second question.
There's some debate whether we can do a question or not, but I guess we can. The captions that readers submit, many of them are brilliant, but some of them are not.
There's a caption contest?
I was wondering.
Get out. If it's a criticism, I can take it.
No. What sometimes I think is that I'd like to see the original caption.
Oh, see the original caption. Yeah. I'm going to do that at a point because I've got all the original captions. Almost always, whatever was in the caption contest as the original caption is also one of the entries. But one of the things to remember is the cartoonists do 10, 15, 20 ideas every week. Many of them aren't very good. The difference between a professional and an amateur is a professional thinks most of their own work is crap, and an amateur really is in love with it. So the fact that they have a failed idea and they just go do another idea. And people are like that. They become very precious about their ideas. Like I get all the time, I have an idea for a cartoon, but the person doesn't want to tell me it because they're afraid I'm going to steal it. So I say, okay, I'm not. So let me finish with one story about ideas. And I think this is for Google and for cartoons and in general. So Condi, Condi's this big, fancy, wonderful, interesting, annoying place, like every other corporation. And there are a lot of guys in great suits and stuff like this. This isn't one of them. This is like a bad Condi suit. So I'm in the elevator with this guy, and we're going down. I don't know the guy. This starts on 20. And he said, they stole my idea. They stole my fucking idea. bitching all the way. I can't believe it. They stole it. They stole my fucking idea. Finally get down to the bottom floor. I don't know the guy. I tap him on the shoulder. I said, get another idea. And that's my suggestion to all of you. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for coming.